We're good? All right, good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the School Committee of the Town of Foxborough. We are here to discuss, our superintendent is going to give us a COVID-19 update. Brent Reuter is participating via remote. Hi, Brent. But he will be able to conference in and ask all his questions and participate. All of our other members are here, but we're in a different format than usual. We're spaced out. So, well, not spaced out, but we are socially distant from one another right now.
Socially distant.
Socially distant. So, before we begin with the COVID-19 update, I did want to offer our condolences to the families of Patricia Donlan and also Bruce Hainsworth. Patricia was a longtime crossing guard for the town of Foxborough, and she passed away sadly on March 15th. And her corner at Carpenter Street and South Street will not be the same without her. She will be missed by scores of children and their parents who she helped usher to safety on a daily basis. And Mr. Hainsworth is a local treasure, and I had the pleasure of being in many meetings with Mr. Hainsworth during my time on the school council at the Taylor School, and he's participated in superintendent meetings from when Dr. Martis was the superintendent until, fairly recently. And Mr. Hainsworth was the epitome of manners. And anytime someone would come in, and people trickle into these meetings, at all hours, and anytime a mom would come into the meeting, Mr. Hainsworth very politely would stand up and wait for the mom to sit down. So his input was always valued, and he was a wonderful supporter of Foxborough Public Schools, and he will be missed as well. He passed away on March 12th. So our condolences to both of their families. Now, Dr. Berdos, you have a COVID-19 update for us. And what I would like to do, I know normally as you give presentations, the committee poses questions as you go. But for today, I think we all have many questions for you, but I think you're going to give us some of the answers during your presentation. So if I could ask the committee to hold your questions until Dr. Berdos is through her presentation, we'll proceed that way, if that's okay. Okay?
Sure. So first and foremost, we hope that our students and our families remain healthy during these days and weeks. That's first and foremost. We clearly understand that the social distancing practice is difficult for all. Just knowing how it is in my own house with students that are K-12 age and college age as well, it's definitely change, and change is difficult in normal circumstances. And these clearly in this health crisis is not normal circumstances, and it's not business as usual. So when we think back in just the last week, just a little over a week ago, we made the decision to close schools for 2 weeks on a Friday. And then 2 days later on Sunday, the governor made the announcement that all schools would close for 3 weeks. When we look at a short-term closure of schools, that's disruptive. Absolutely it is. And the things that need to go along for planning with that, when we think about how we build in 5 snow days for a school year, we had only used one actually back in December, so we still had 4 snow days. So when you move from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, that's going to change the landscape of what we do, and plans being put in place are going to look differently. So we really have focused as a district in this past week as far as connecting to our students and thinking about, our fundamental values of connection and well-being of our students, opportunities for enrichment and continuous learning experiences, and sharing those. The direction from the Commissioner of Education was that we are to provide alternate learning experiences for students. Those that are enrichment, they are of content that has already been previously taught, to really forward that with work in that area. At the same time, not to be graded, and to enrich the continuous of learning, to keep students engaged. And so teachers very quickly over the weekend after the closure, working through conference calls with administrators and collaborating with each other, we messaged out on that Monday to be able to provide resources for parents to be able to keep their students engaged in learning. And so that has been the focus, as well as those relationships that we know are critically important, particularly with our students in this uncertain time, and making connections. We've heard a lot of feedback from parents and the smiles that students have had after connecting with their teachers this week, and the appreciation of our teachers reaching out. If they've not been able to reach students through an electronic mode, whether it's been email or some of the other forms digitally that they've reached out, we've even had teachers calling on the phone to check in with students at home. And that has been very much appreciated by parents. The idea of social distancing, when we think about it, we thrive on being together in communities of learners, and to have our students to then say that you need to social distance, it's difficult. It's difficult to be able to say to your child that you can't play with someone else, and it's for reasons that they may not really understand. So that in itself brings more to families as far as the dynamics within their own home. It's not easy, and it's going to bring new challenges. And at the same time, when we have students that we're trying to provide these opportunities for advancing their learning, when you might have parents that have they're teaching their own students in their house and providing structure and routine, which we know is so critically important for students, and at the same time they may be working from home. So there are other challenges when we think about daycares that have changed or have closed as a result, and you have older siblings that are looking after younger siblings. There's so many layers to this in households. So we know how invaluable it is for us to keep that connection with our students. And honestly, it's been so important for our teachers when they talk about having that connection with their students and maintaining and seeing their faces, and how that makes it better for them, and it even takes away some of their anxiousness. So on both sides. At the same time, we've been talking with teachers in digital platforms through multiple meetings to talk about what does this look like in order to put remote learning in place. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happened. It's only been a week. Yeah. But we also know that there's a lot of questions that we don't have answers to, and we're going to continue. We're looking at this as a week by week. Some people are looking at it as day by day when you talk with families, because we've heard that some are struggling with the amount of information that we're pushing out, and some want more. And so trying to find that balance and not overwhelm families, but at the same time provide that information to them so they can help provide some kind of a semblance of structure and routine in their families. So it really is important for us to be able to remain flexible as we navigate a territory that we've never been in before and couldn't anticipate being in, quite honestly. So we are very appreciative of the patience that people are coming forward with as we navigate this territory and looking at what remote learning can look like. So as we look at these 3 weeks with what we look across the country, and knowing that there is the possibility that it could extend beyond these 3 weeks and what that looks like, we will be receiving more guidance from the Commissioner of Education. We have weekly phone calls, conference calls with the Commissioner, those on weekends as well. We've had those to be able to provide guidance to districts. And there's a great concern for equity and access to be able to make sure that all students are being available to the content and the connections. And so I'll talk a little bit about that from a technology side as well. So again, we've really focused on maintaining the continuing of learning by providing resources this week and maintaining our sense of community through our relationships. As we move forward, currently we know that the school closure order is through Monday, April the 6th. And we also know that we have to remain flexible because that could change. When we look at our families seeking routines and assistance and how to best navigate that in their home, our teachers have been meeting with the curriculum directors, with principals weekly. They've been meeting as teacher teams, as department teams to plan instruction that is not necessarily instruction. We know that we cannot duplicate in a brick and mortar classroom. We cannot duplicate the classroom. But at the same time, to be able to have learning experiences and that continuity and really look at our standards and by grade level and by content, what that looks like for each of our grades. So at this point in time, through those collaborations, there have been weekly communications that have gone out from our district leaders. We've been meeting as an administrative district team at least twice a week through Zoom meetings, and then they've been meeting with all of their teachers, their mental health teams, their service providers, PTs, SLPs, OTs, our school nurses, every single group, and having them to make sure that we're reaching out to our families and providing the resources that we need to. As an example, when we think about our nurses, we have something that somebody might not think about, medications that they have, and calling them and having them be able to pick up those medications if they need to. And at the same time, some of our most medically fragile students, nurses are reaching out to families and talking with them and as a resource there for them. Our mental health team meeting collaboratively online, knowing that the connection, the phone call, and reaching out to students is so important, and that connection with them, it goes both ways as far as knowing that we're going to maintain that consistency with them. So our goal with this week, as we move from last week, is to ensure that the consistency by grade level is out to our families, by department at the high school. Teachers have been reaching out through a variety of different methods with their students to stay connected through Microsoft Teams, so they could have a live experience with students. Our middle school and our high school students have email addresses, so they're able to have those experiences. And they've used other resources such as Zoom or Flipgrid, different ways to be able to reach out to where it's something that's reaching out, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous at times. And that has been a way to be able to have that content provided, to be able to give feedback to students. Email is obviously another mode of communication as well. But again, really looking at all of our online opportunities to leverage those resources for collaboration and the different activities based on where we are within the curriculum at this time. We have a number of online platforms such as Alex, Redbird, Zingy, STEMscopes, StudySync. There's so many online resources that we can provide to students to be able to have that experience reinforce where we are at this point in time. But again, we know that we can't replicate the school day as it currently is. So that face-to-face part is happening, in different ways if it can. We obviously don't have that at the elementary level. As far as looking at the access piece, which is really important for our students, we sent out a survey yesterday, and out of that response, at this point in time, we've had 1,198 students, which was actually, that was the number of families. The number of students that represented was 1,777. And 98.5% said yes, that they have Wi-Fi access, and that 92% of them have computers, or 93% of them have smartphones. It was also important for us to look at, you may have access within your home, but as far as availability, because now that, and I can speak from this personally, you have college students that are now at home, and we're unlike the colleges in that as far as pushing out distance or remote learning for a college is much different than it looks for K-12. So they may be in their home and having access to devices or Wi-Fi, and then you've got parents working from home. So you have some competing demands, whether it's for bandwidth or whether it's for devices itself. So one of the other questions that we asked was the availability if you had less than 30 minutes, which corresponded to the number of students that said that they didn't have Wi-Fi access, which made sense to us. We had 10% that said that they had less than an hour, 14% that had 60 to 90 minutes, and then 72% said 90 minutes or more. So that helps us as, again, we're in a place where we're having to go week to week at this point in time to see, well, what is the availability, although they may have access. And for those students that don't have access, our technology department's been working really hard to re-image laptops so that they are able to work off the network and then providing those for students. All of our buildings right now are closed except for central office. So those laptops, the technology department's been bringing those to central office, and we've been, based on who those students are and staff members as well, signing those out to those staff members. So we've deployed about 25 so far. I know, there's been a question if, are we going to be able to meet the demands for all of our students or staff that come forward? Based on the survey information, when we see that 98.5% of them have Wi-Fi access or 92% have computers, we feel that we'll be able to meet that need. So that is something that we're currently, looking at, because that is something that the Commissioner of Education is very much strong on his message about, and we are too, equity and access and meeting the needs of all of our students and what that looks like. Again, we've not been in this territory before, and we're not going to have all the answers right away. We're figuring that out because it's going to look different for a kindergartner than it looks for a third grader than it does for a middle school or a high school student. As far as the teaching and learning aspect, I don't know, Dr. Mello, if you want to add, because you've sat in on a number of those collaboration meetings with curriculum directors and grade level content teachers.
Yeah, one of the things I would share is that in those meetings, there have been all stakeholders who've been there. So building administrators, special educators, math specialists, reading specialists. It's really been, and curriculum directors, all hands on deck so that we can maximize the resources and the ideas that we have in the room. I think to Dr. Berdos's point, week one was a one-day turnaround for us to get out enrichment. That's literally what it was. The commissioner was a Sunday night call, and the governor made the announcement, and then Monday we were able to push out those resources. So that was a general sort of enrichment. The difference this week has been through the collaboration. It's a little bit more granular, as Dr. Berdos was saying, in terms of better alignment to the grade level standards and expectations, and really using our report card standards and our power standards as a guide to say, what are the most important standards here that we have already learned this year, and put our energy on focusing those and revisiting those. Because the idea is to get to mastery anyway, so maximize this opportunity to revisit those pieces. As we move forward, I think you've touched upon this, and the commissioner has certainly stressed it. Just because we are out of school doesn't make our commitment to equity any different. In fact, it's greater. We need to think about our English learners. We need to think about our students who need accommodations and modifications, as well as our students who don't have access to technology. And then in addition to that, we also have to think about, and I'm sure many parents have already said this, how much screen time should we have students engaged in? So there needs to be a balance of offline activities too. We can't forget about movement and music and reading books and writing and all those things that we can do without those devices. So from a curriculum and instruction perspective, I know that teachers are eager to do as much as they can with students and leverage the current platforms that we do have that Dr. Berdos mentioned. That being said, there is also sort of the thinking of, if parents are home and they're working from home and we venture into new territory, things students haven't learned before, what is that support going to look like? Right now, we've tried to make sure that students can be relatively independent, because it's not realistic to say parents can sit right there with them all the time and do that. So those are some of the things that we need to consider as we move forward to the next stages of what that might look like through the lens of curriculum and instruction.
And then other questions that have come up are things such as advanced placement courses at the high school, students that are taking AP courses. And the College Board has come out, and it's going to look different this year. It's going to be taken from home, from what they're saying, and it's the test itself is going to look different. So our teachers that are AP teachers are working with their students through distance learning to make sure that they are ready for that. At the same time, those courses, when we think about content, College Board has said they're looking at the content that's been taught through the month of March. That's what we're hearing from them at this point in time. So those are questions. There are questions when it comes to sports and when that's going to take place and how that has been pushed off. And we know how important those extracurricular clubs and activities and sports are for students. And when they don't have that right now, that is even much more difficult for them during their day. I'm thinking about, our superintendent student advisory council and reaching out to those students and hearing from them. And they're saying, my teacher has provided this information, but having the structure of a school day is hard because I might procrastinate. And so we've been communicating back and forth with students just as teachers have through that. And you're talking about high school students and having a hard time with the structure of a day. So when we look at that from elementary, that it's absolutely a challenge because we've taken the structure away. The buildings, again, each of the buildings are closed down. When we think about technology in our network, the technology department is working on, and they're just about there for teachers to be able to access all of their files, which when you think about if they're providing remote learning opportunities, they need access to all of their files that are within the computer and the network here in the buildings. And so that's just about there to be able to give them that access because they're not able to come into the buildings. Our custodians have done a very thorough, deep clean of every single space. We have a rotating schedule right now with them at our two largest buildings. We have someone that's there practicing social distancing that's there from 6 to 12 and then 12 to 6. And then at the elementary level, rotating as well. At central office, we have reduced hours to where we do have coverage, but we're not having more than one person in each of the offices for that reason, because it's important for the functioning of a business to be able to maintain that. But at the same time, if we were not able to be there, technology department has made sure that they have what they need to be able to operate from home. If somebody does need to come to central office, our hours right now, at this point in time, are 8 a.m. to 1, but at the same time, we're having people make appointments if they need to come by. Deliveries are not going past the front foyer, so we're taking all of the CDC guidelines with social distancing and all of the other things that come along with that. Our food service that was sent out earlier, they are providing our drive-up service for our students for our breakfast and lunch programs. And that started last Thursday. And we had, I think, about 70, how many families?
We had about 45 families and 78 students. And that's for the free and reduced side of our students.
Bill, I'm going to violate my own rule just because we're talking about this. If families have changed circumstances in the last week and would not have qualified for this free and reduced lunch program 2 weeks ago, but have lost both jobs and would, how should they go about getting in touch with you or Dr. Berdos to get on this? Can we
If
make
they
provisions for that?
file with the state, their names would automatically come down to us through the SNAP program.
Okay.
So that's an automatic side, and it goes to food service. Or they can request through Janice Watt's office a form to fill out and go from there with it. But that would be the only way at this point.
All right, because I think that may be the case with a lot of people right now. Sorry.
No, I think that's a really important question because we do have a lot of families that are in need. And we can't overlook that this is a health crisis, and with people that are now being in businesses where they're not going to work and circumstances have changed. And when you have standing out there last Thursday and a family comes through and you have one of the students hand you a sticky note and is handing them out that says thank you for lunch, that's what's important, is taking care of all of our students in every single way. It's health. It's the mental, social, emotional, what is so important. And what this community values is that we teach the whole child. It's not just about academics. And I am personally so proud of all of our teachers that have reached out to students. And it is about their health and wellness first. And that we need to be able to meet those needs, whether it's through lunch and providing that, and then working in partnership with the Foxborough Food Pantry as well. From an operational standpoint, is there anything else that would be important as far as an update?
No, I think obviously we're taking every option we can as far as reducing costs within the building. So we've reduced the level of temperature that we're maintaining. And, you know, the assumption here is that obviously we're going to need to give back to the town. There's going to be a loss of income relative to local receipts. So we're doing everything we can to obviously pull back on expenses. Obviously, many expenses that we normally would incur during this period for classroom materials and stuff like that, you know, aren't being placed because we obviously aren't there. So depending on how long this lasts, it's one of our first thoughts as well. We are paying vendors, but only up to the services they provided at this point in time. And because we do run our own bus service, we don't have some of the problems that other towns have where they're contracted out to another company and which has leases, and some of those contracts have 180-day minimum requirements to pay. So we're, you know, basically we're not, you know, our buses are idled, the gas, we're not spending the fuel. And, you know, really our only concern at this point is the staffing that we have. But we're obviously able to cut down on the cost all around it. So I think we've done fairly well with that.
When we go back to thinking about the food service department too, I'd also like to say that, you know, all of our guidance counselors and psychologists and social workers are reaching out to families. But if families are in need of something, please reach out to them. They're a wonderful resource and can connect them with other resources too that are available.
May I ask a question? Is this affecting the work at the borough at all?
Today's announcement may. We've been running up to this point in time. Right now, we're waiting to see what the general contractor's stance will be. Construction in general is considered an essential essential need, but depending on how strict the state gets on it, will depend on whether or not that continues.
Thanks, Bill.
Oh, boy.
So I think that overall, when we look at this, this is week one.
Yeah.
And with each week, the amount of work that's taking place behind the scenes is really exorbitant. And our teachers have really come together and have learned skills very quickly that they didn't have in the past. And they're learning from each other and how to be able to share with their students and methods that they haven't used before. And what are ways that we can continue to provide an academic experience while maintaining the important connection at the same time, and what that looks like. It's going to change from week to week. It's going to change as we continue to get guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and that we have to be flexible and we have to respond. And that's what we're doing. It's week one, but at the same time, week 2 and week 3, if it ends at that point and we're back in schools, which that is what we all hope, because our halls are very quiet without our students, and we miss them terribly.
I'd just like to echo your sentiments in terms of the gratitude towards everyone who's been working together, our administrators, our teachers, our extended service providers. They have been feverishly working behind the scenes to add resources in places where parents may normally look for resources, but they're finding much more robust collections. So as we mentioned earlier, there are some families who maybe feel like, wow, this is a lot and it's too much, but there are those families who maybe want more, so they can find more by looking at those resources that teachers are providing on either their individual websites or their school websites. And it has just been really, really heartwarming to see how much effort and energy people want to put into our students, even though they can't see them the same way every day. They still want to approach this in a way that meets their needs. And that has been really, I don't know, it's been mind-blowing, because like, as Dr. Berto said, many of them didn't have these skills, and they're going out and acquiring them just so they can make those connections.
And the other part too that I think that is important to mention is, just because you have a computer or a tablet or a phone, being able to provide remote learning is very different than what we do in a classroom every day. So navigating those waters is very different, and we're doing it all at the same time. Some have talked about it's like building the airplane in the air. And
Okay,
it can,
Yeah.
because it's changing what we're doing in providing learning opportunities for students, and we anticipate it will continue to change week by week, particularly if we're in this for longer than these 3 weeks.
Have you gotten through everything
I
in your
I
update?
believe so.
Okay. I have 2 comments that came in through the school committee inbox. As was indicated on our posted agenda, because we are in this public health crisis, and this is a public meeting, we are adapting our participation to remote participation from the public. And so on our agenda, we indicated that if someone had a comment or a question that they would otherwise come down and make during open public comment period, to send it via email to our school committee inbox or call the central office. And we received 2. The first comment is from Shelby Kornbluth, and I apologize, Shelby, if I pronounced your name wrong, from Lawton Lane. And she says, thank you for taking public questions for your meeting this evening. I have 2 questions. 1, I believe that since the governor has declared a state of emergency, schools do not need to be in session for a full 180 days. While I do not think that the kids need to be in school for a full 180 days, I do believe they need to complete the curriculum for the school year. How are you going to ensure that the students complete the full curriculum for all classes? And 2, many other districts inside and outside of Massachusetts are utilizing Google Classroom. So far, with the exception of 1 subject, all work that my kids have received is optional and not very rigorous. When will this work be required, and does the school plan on implementing Google Classroom for interactive learning experience with their teachers?
Okay, so I think we can answer this together. The first part of it is one of the 180 days for students. We're not going to have 180 days of instruction, clearly. So as far as the curriculum, as Dr. Mello had mentioned before, really looking at our power standards by content, that is something that we're looking at. But at the same time, the commissioner, when he looked at accountability from attendance, he ended counting attendance when we think about it from MCAS and how that has a connection to our own results. At the beginning of March, he stopped attendance, knowing that we were in an unprecedented time that we've not in, and it's not going to be business as usual. We're not going to be here for 180 days. It's going to look different. And so we're going to do the absolute best that we can, and we're going to look at what those opportunities are for the information that we're sending out. To the question on Google Classrooms versus and the different experience with students. Again, I would say we're 1 week into this, and the direction that we were provided from the Commissioner of Education was to provide continuity of learning through enrichment opportunities and provide resources to families. So that's what we've been focusing on in this first week. Just as a classroom from school to school, or the autonomy of a teacher in teaching looks different, that's going to look different. Some are using Zoom, some are using Microsoft Teams. So to that question, as far as a Google Classroom, we're not a Google district. We are a Microsoft Office district. So we use Teams if you're at the secondary level for that. But other teachers are using other modes, whether it's Flipgrid, whether it's Zoom as an example. And that's going to look differently depending on what level. Elementary is going to not look the same because you don't have that as an option by not having the email addresses like through the Microsoft platform with Teams.
Up until this point, the commissioner has made it clear that these missed days do not count as time on learning, and that has been part of the directive to not advance the learning process into new content. So it's like a snow day. It's time that you missed out of school. So moving forward, what that looks like in the direction that we hope to get from the commissioner may look different, but we haven't actually received that piece yet of what that will look like in terms of accountability to the curriculum and the standards and the frameworks. And as I said earlier, we have to think about in the whole context of what does a day in the life of a student at home actually look like? Their teacher is not there with them. So having that contact through a digital venue, while that will be a step in the right direction for sure, is that going to replace what we do on a daily basis? Absolutely not. We know that's not the case. So as Dr. Berto said, we're 1 week in, and we'll have to continue to navigate this as the expectations and the overall game plan starts to become more clear. But on day 6, we're not exactly there yet, even from the direction from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed.
And we understand that when you're looking at learning opportunities that are optional, that you're going to have students at home
Oh, yes.
that are going to say, I'm good. I'm, not wanting to take that option. So as we move forward, it's a matter of how do we have more accountability in the way that we can.
Thank you.
Did that answer the first question?
I think so. I will say if anybody, is at home and has further questions, all of our school committee contact information is listed on the school website. And if you have questions and want to submit them to the school committee inbox, we'll do our best to get them answered. And if you want to talk to any of us, we're all available. Isn't that right, everybody?
Yes.
So I know parents are frustrated and have a lot of questions right now that we may not have answers to, but we'll always listen. The second community inbox comment was from our friend Joe Garrity, and Joe asked, for my public comment tonight, I'm just going to read exactly what he typed. For my public comment tonight for the school committee, can you please ask if we don't go to school on Good Friday, April 10th, and the extension of school closing continues beyond April 6th, could you ask if the last day of school for Foxborough Public Schools this year, with all 5 cancellations used, will be either Tuesday, June 23rd or Wednesday, June 24th? If we go back to normal April 7th for the week of April 13th, do you think that Foxborough Public Schools will consider going April vacation for all 5 days? This is my public comment for tonight's school committee meeting. And Joe is always very concerned about our calendar, and I think that he is voicing a question that a lot of families, a lot of parents have right now. I'm just going to let you respond.
Sure. We have been advised from the commissioner that our 185th day, which are by state law, we build in 5 snow days, that would be the last day. So if we look on our school calendar, the 185th day is June 23rd, right now. But at the same time, he has also said that that is the floor. School committees can decide at the local level to go up until June 30th. So that it will be a decision for the school committee at some point in time. As far as April vacation, that could be something that's taken out of our hands and it comes down from the commissioner, and that all schools, if we're back, would then give up April vacation. So it could be from that direction, or it could be that we're back and then we make the decision at the local level. Again, I don't have the exact answer to that, but it is something that is definitely being discussed, because when we're out of school for these days, we're looking at days, if we're back, where can we grab those days?
Thank you. So we have another meeting coming into this meeting room at 6:30, and I would like everyone on the committee to get their questions answered. And I know Brent has some, so would you like to start, Brent?
Sure. Just follow up from the, just I think a point of information for people at home, and a follow up to Shelby Kornbluth's question a little bit. What is the relationship between recommendations the commissioner makes and which the district must do versus take under advisement?
So I think it's important, where that's our leadership as school districts across the Commonwealth, that we follow the direction of the commissioner. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're not leaving any students behind. And so in order to assure that, that's a lot of planning on our part. He has made comments to saying that his recommendation will not be as an example for grades to take place. that it would be looking at what are some other, alternatives and what that looks like. I don't have the answer right now, but those are conversations that are taking place, in that we want students to be accountable, but what that looks like, again, we're really early on in this, and we have to remember about the equity of meeting all students. So I would say it right now, that we need that guidance, and then we need to see what that looks like in the context of Foxborough.
Brett? Does that answer your question?
For now, yeah, I mean, as things develop, it'll be, I, will continue to ask, about that, as well. Just, I am wholly understanding the idea to leave no students behind. I also philosophically am from a point that while we're working our tails off, and I know everybody in the district is, to leave no students behind, that in doing so, we don't forget to continue to provide opportunity for all students to continue to grow
Point.
to the best of their abilities.
Thank you, Brent. Do you have any other questions before we open it up to the other members?
No, actually, the intro was very, very thorough to my mind. I'm very appreciative of the thought that you all put into it, and thank you for covering so many of the bases.
And again, I think that it's week to week, and we'll be able to have more information and guidance as well. And again, what that looks like here.
Right.
Rob, would you like to go next?
I do. I have just a couple of questions that have come up. One, with the, if I understood you correctly, Allison, end of March was what we're looking at as kind of everything we've accomplished up to the end of March from a curriculum standpoint are covered to the end of March. What does that do to how does that impact our graduating class? Not from a again, a curriculum standpoint more than anything else.
I think that's a tough one, because when we think about where our graduates are, the good part is they're engaged in a lot of elective work. So when we think about the actual curriculum and standards, they've already met their graduation requirements by the time they are sophomores. So when thinking about the content that remains, I think that's where your question lies. I don't know. I guess I don't even know how to exactly answer that, because they're not all being exposed to the same content anyway.
Well, for completing credit for graduation, I guess, is that
Yeah.
Is that the
Having a
essence of your
senior, I
question?
think that is something that is probably weighing heavily on seniors' minds right now, and that knowing that there is a path to graduation, a
Yes.
secure path
Yes.
to
So,
graduation.
So where the
so not succinct. Let's
No,
just, we've
it's
learned that
totally
by now,
fine.
right?
Thank you. No, the guidance the commissioner gave last week was much more around, okay, will we finish term 3, and then what will term 4 look like? Will we combine terms? And where it's already changing, it's like, okay, will it be credit or no credit? And that's sort of the avenue that we're going down, because the accountability doesn't sound like it's going to be quantitative that way, where it's traditional grades. I don't know if you want to add to that.
And the other part too that I would say, any student that is worried about not having enough credits to graduate, the guidance department is reaching out one by one to those students. I know that Mrs. Myers-Pakla has already had a parent, and she's been able to, calm those fears for that, because that's a real fear. And there's so much uncertainty. My own daughter's graduating in May from college. Her graduation's been canceled. There's so much disappointment along with
Right.
the worry too.
Since you spoke about graduation, right now, I know, my son Sam is president of his class, and he had a Zoom conference call with Diana and his class advisors and the other class officers, and I believe Sheila was on the conference call as well. So far, everything is still, nothing has been taken off the table.
No.
Everything is, God willing, we'll get through the other side of this and be able to proceed. But I just, for people like myself who are fretting about this, and it's a big fret. It's not, it is. It's important. The graduation caps and gowns have been ordered, the diplomas have been ordered, and, you know, we're going to do something for our seniors.
The only thing that we've taken off the table right now are field trips in the month of April.
Thank you. Okay, I think people needed to hear that as well, so. And I agree with week by week right now. That is the best we can do as a town and as a school district, in my personal opinion. So. Did you get all your questions answered?
I didn't, but that's okay.
Then back to
Well,
Rob.
one was just a comment, actually, and I did make a note, because one of my questions was about technology. So it's good that the forecast, that the technology demand, that we have the capacity to meet the demand. So I just wanted to call that out as good news, based on what we've heard so far.
Some good news, yay.
You know, well, I'm look at Tina's sweater, right?
I know,
We
right?
always had to find gratitude every day.
I wore this on purpose.
I figured it was a
was-
conscious choice.
It was indeed.
And I applaud you on that, or for that. The last question I had was, as far as the workers in the schools who are impacted by the changes in schedule, how are we doing anything to accommodate for them?
Say that again.
So people that are impacted by pulling back on schedules, the hourly workers, are we doing anything to provide accommodations for them?
Right.
As far as if they're continuing to be paid, is that what you're asking?
Any type of accommodation, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, everybody's being paid, they're based on their base salary rates. You know, as they've pointed out, many of them are still working on a regular basis. Two of our programs, Extended Day and Food Service, are not paid by taxpayers. They're paid by their own revolving accounts. Fortunately, I'll say the Food Service current director has done a phenomenal job building up a reserve, so they do have enough money to pay through. They are doing the free and reduced distribution, packaging, and stuff like that, so they are still continuing to do some work. Extended Day, again, has that same thing where they've built up a reserve so they can continue to pay their staff to keep them around. And most of what we're doing is based on what, again, the state is telling us to do. The state is really pushing for continuation of salaries and benefits until we know exactly where we're going with this. So at this point, it's stayed consistent. You also have to understand that municipalities pay their own unemployment. So it's not like it's coming from a general fund. If you do lay people off, the town's going to get a bill for it, which would go from the school side to the town side. It's at a different rate. It could be, well, it was 60%, but if they change, which they've been talking about changing to 80 to 100%, not a heck of a lot of difference, and the risk of potentially losing staff. So when we do turn this thing around, you want everybody to be back in the right seat and moving forward.
Thank you. That's on mine.
Richard?
Is there a standard meeting or a weekly meeting with the commissioner, with the superintendents?
Yes. So we have a conference call with him every Friday at 10 a.m., but we've had additional ones on weekends already to that. And it's a standing meeting, but we've also been told at any moment that it could be one that's earlier. They're working on a communication to parents that's going to come out from the Department of Education, and we should be receiving that sometime this week, that we're being asked to distribute to all families, and we will be looking for that.
Yes.
And
A lot of people are looking for that.
yes, a lot of people are. So, again, and then in addition to the meetings that we have with the commissioner on these Zoom calls, we also have them with all of the area superintendents and assistant superintendents when we're looking at teaching and learning. So I've never spent so much time looking at a screen in the last week and 2 weekends with all of these calls. But at the same time, they're really important calls for us to be able to get the guidance and direction.
Thank you for that. I had suspected that was the case, but I think it is important for people to hear that there is a great deal of communication with the commissioner, but also amongst local people as well, too. The other reason I asked it is the release by the commissioner today actually worded the learning a little bit different. So I'm intrigued by it, so I'm looking forward to an update as it goes through, because I pulled it up just to read it again because it came through. He mentions that staff should be planning for how best to equitably provide alternative access to student learning opportunities during this period and potentially beyond. So I read that because I have been trying to pay attention to what's going on. I read that as a little different statement than enrichment. So I guess I'm just asking, as you go forward to be, certainly I'm sure you are being attentive to it, but I thought that was a little different take on it.
That's the pivot that I was
Yes.
referring to.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right.
So we're
That's-
seeing it move from enrichment.
Exactly.
And that's why I'm saying we need to look at this with each week, and it kind of goes towards what Brent was talking about too, and what that's going to look like. And that's the preparation behind the
Thank you.
scenes that we're working on from, what does that look like? It's definitely a pivot from what he had said before with just enrichment.
That's what I thought. That's what
And
I
those
thought the case was.
conversations have started because we know we can't just do that overnight.
Exactly
It's going to
correct.
require quite a bit of planning and orchestration.
Understood.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Richard, actually, can I ask you a question and ask you to put your MIAA hat on for us? Because I know there are a
Might be
lot
about
of...
sports, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of student athletes and a lot of student athlete families that are anxiously awaiting, the start of spring sports. And do you have any words of wisdom for these kids and their families right now?
Well, right now, the Tournament Management Committee, that is the kind of the tournament group that manages our state tournaments, but also helps to give advice for the regular season, so it's a separate entity. They have advised the Board of Directors, of which the Board of Directors has also agreed that no sports will start before April 27th. Tournament Management Committee, just in a meeting last week, recommended that the start of sports would not have to wait until the 11th day. There's a very clear rule in the regular season that you cannot start competition and play until the 11th day after practice starts, which then would push things out from April 27 to 11 days later into May. So they did vote for 6 days of practice, could start competition on the 7th day, which would actually be the Monday following April 27th. Off the top of my head, I forget the
I
date. It
don't
might
have
be
it.
May 3rd or
Something
whatever
like
it
that.
is. So right now, that's the plan. As for tournaments and what the regular season will look like, all the boards of the MIA that work are member school athletic directors and principals. And so they're all coming together, to talk about this and having meetings with the board of directors as well
Yeah.
to really figure out what the best answer is. It appears to me, maybe this is my editorial comment, that it's going to have to be a shortened season in some capacity. And then it's going to be a decision for the board of directors and to recommend to the schools if it's just a regular season with no tournament, if it's an abbreviated tournament, or what it looks like.
Thank you for the update. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but I know there's a lot of people anxiously awaiting those decisions as well. So,
It will, I will say this, because there's been things that have been said clearly, it will absolutely look different.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no way around it. The Tournament Management Committee also said that the cutoff date for a regular season would be June 10th. Now, that's a key date, because if June 10th is when you play the regular season till, as opposed to June 1st, and you're going to have to end it by June 20th, then that's a very clear indicator that the tournament would have to look different
Yeah.
if it does take place.
thank you. I really appreciate the
Sure.
update. Debbie, did you have any questions? And Richard, did you get all your questions?
I did,
Oh.
yes, thanks.
Debbie?
No, but I do have a comment.
Please.
I am in awe at the hours and the vigilance with which you are handling all of this crisis. You are an incredible team. People want answers to questions that cannot be answered yet. So I don't have any questions. You cannot be doing more than you already are. And thank you for our tech team for the incredible work you're doing.
Both on the town and the school side.
I
Erin
know.
Heyer is in the back, and also want to thank, Mike Weber, who is working hard back there in the booth to get our message out to the public right now, and, doing updates constantly. So we really appreciate FCA and our IT team, for sure. Now more
The
than
questions that people have do not have answers yet.
Yes, I know.
I just pray that the peak of this comes soon.
Well,
sooner rather than
I
later.
think it is definitely wait and see for us for the
For
next
sports, for everything,
Right.
everything.
All right, so from a minute, I just actually have one question, and forgive me if you touched on it and I went past me, but MCAS. I know the Secretary of Education has relieved states of their standardized testing obligations, but has the commissioner provided any guidance just yet on MCAS? Or is it done for this year?
No, we do not have that directly from the
Okay.
state level from him. The only thing that has been shared is that, there's a number of possibilities, whether it's a shortened time frame, whether it's less testing, whether there's no testing at all. So we're still waiting for that. What's important are any of our 12th graders who took the retest and making sure that they've passed, because it's a competency determination for graduation. So that really is an important piece right there, is looking at our 12th graders. But we still need to hear from the state level on that.
So that's one of those unanswerable questions, right?
They're
now.
currently, the official word currently is they're postponed, but they are not yet canceled.
Okay.
The opening of the window is postponed.
Okay, good. From an administrative standpoint, 2 years ago, Bill brought our warrants. So we have to sign our warrants, 3 of us have to sign on Fridays or before Tuesday morning, right? So, and a couple years ago, there was legislation that went into effect that said school committees could opt to have one signature and then, am I right about the
Yes.
one signature? One signature and then a summary signed by the person who signed the warrant saying, I went in and signed warrants totaling X amount of dollars. At the time, we opted not to do that, and I understood our reasons then, but I think given the current situation that we're in and to minimize people coming and going at the central office, if we could have a vote today, I would move that we go to a one signature format, at least through the end of this fiscal year, through June 30th.
To the
and then-
end of,
this fiscal year, through the end of this fiscal year, say through June 30th, and then we can revisit it in July at our retreat, assuming we're back to normal business then, and decide how it works. So can you speak to this? a
Yeah,
little bit?
I would say it's a wise idea, because even though we're talking about a 3-week period today,
Yeah.
likelihood, is that it could be extended. And rather than have to have you guys get back together to try to vote, this would at least give us that option to move forward. I think I could always get to one of, but I believe in the law, the way it was written, there was supposed to be one person that was assigned it with a second person that could be the backup.
I would suggest that I be the person
Yeah.
for now, if the committee is agreeable to that. And then I don't know if there's somebody else who would like to be the backup person who is available to come into the office. Anyone?
I won't be on the committee, so it would
Yeah,
have to.
I think we
I
do
forgot.
need, I'm sorry, Bevy.
forgot.
Although it sounds
We're
like
all
if
kind of
elections are.
around.
pretty
I may still be here and trying to.
So close, so
But,
close.
Yeah, if
Who knows?
one of you guys could be the backup to me, I'm usually around, but,
Yeah,
if-
and I've been doing it simply because Fridays and Mondays are typically days that I'm
Flexible
available,
days, yeah.
right? So, but that's a little bit out the window right now. So I'm happy to do it, but if somebody else really feels,
Well, he's gonna be buried in sports.
I will say most of the time I am able
Right.
to, but, it would just be
I think
an
there's been
unusual
one time when my
circumstance.
signature was first and it was a special day for me.
We should have sent him a gold
So is the
star.
motion to have Tina Bellinger as the signer and
And Rob as our backup
I'll second
signatory, and through the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, I will second that.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, Brent. We can see you at home. All right, 500. And just so that everyone at home knows, Janet, our faithful secretary, is going to do complete meeting minutes based on the FCA video tonight. So that was our first.
Thank you, Janet.
Yes, thank you, Janet. And I'm going to say hi to my mom, who's watching at home. Hi, Mom. The second administrative thing is, we do have this meeting room booked for next Monday, March 30th. I think because
Time?
it's at 7 o'clock. The reason we're early tonight is because there is another meeting coming in here at 6:30. At least that was on the schedule when I spoke with the town manager about tonight. But next week, we do have it available for our usual meeting time at 7 p.m. I think, given the fast-moving nature of this situation, if we could keep that meeting and have a next update, based on your teleconferences with the superintendent and see where we are at as a district. And then, obviously, if any other administrative things come up that the school committee does need to vote on, we could add those to the agenda. I think for now,
And then
if the committee is amendable. And then we do have our regular schedule. That next week would be another special meeting because it is not our regularly scheduled meeting. The following week, April 6th, we have our regularly scheduled meeting.
So this will be, the 30th will be considered special,
Yes.
and our April 6th
Yes.
regular.
I would like to keep that on the books if everyone's available and be able to, I think we are spaced out enough here. If something changes, I know Mike and Aaron can set us up to work remotely, and we can even all be remote and conduct the meeting that way. And it's my understanding from Mike that he can get that up on FCA's screen and get us out to the public that way, if something does change between now and next Monday. Is that okay, agreeable to everybody? All right, then we'll keep that on the schedule. Does anybody have any other questions or anything else you want to add?
Bevy did some thank yous, and I think
Yeah.
we should thank some of the other people too.
Oh, yes.
I know the custodians are doing a whole different plan,
Yep.
a whole different method of what they're doing to keep everyone safe, so we appreciate their time. The teachers, I know we're all exploring to take us to a different place.
Yes.
Of Zoom learning, whatever, Google Classroom, you name it. And they're on a very high trajectory, and I think they're all putting some time in to do that, so thank them for their efforts too, and certainly for all the department heads and leaders that are organizing it. But there's a lot of people at every level, I think, that are kind of stepping up, so they all deserve huge thanks.
That is very well said, and I think the entire committee is in agreement with you, Richard. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So before we adjourn, I did want to add one more thing. Saturday morning, I was looking for a little guidance and perspective myself. I was feeling a little frustrated and, low, because this is a difficult situation we are facing as a community. And so I said, what can I do? And I decided to watch Sam Burns' TED Talk, his philosophy for a happy life. And it's worth the 12 minutes if you sit down and have 12 minutes to listen to what our Sam Burns has to say.
Where did you find this?
If you go to YouTube and just type in Sam Burns, it will pull up, or you can go to my Facebook page, Bevy, because I posted it there, so you can just click on it there. But I wanted to remind folks before we adjourn, Sam's 4 points. And the first one really resonates with where we are at today. His first point is, be okay with what you ultimately can't do, because there is so much you can do.
Do you know that is up on the marquee right now on?
Yes,
on the
actually,
theater.
Jim DeVellis texted me a picture of the marquee and said he was inspired by my Facebook post to put it up there. So we have a lot to thank Sam Burns for right now. The second is surround yourself with people you want to be around. So keep that in mind as we are all spending extra special time with our family, our adult children, our little ones, that this is special time with people that you love. And Sam's third point, and I think we all need to keep focus on this in the next few weeks, is keep moving forward, no matter what. And so we're going to do that as a district, as a community, as a state, and as a nation. Keep moving forward. And Sam's fourth point is always never miss a party if you can help it. And after
well,
this
is my
done,
socialization, but I'm not going to call it a party.
well, for now the parties are virtual, but after this is done, there'll be some parties, and I
There'll
think
be
we'll
a
have
lot of
to
block
celebrate.
parties, I hope.
Let's hope. So anyway, thank you for bearing with me, but I wanted to share that.
I know.
And Dr. Berdos, again, I did wear my gratitude sweater because I am grateful for all that our teachers, our administration, our staff, everybody is pulling together, our parents, everybody is pulling together. I've received several really uplifting texts and emails from people who really appreciate what is going on. It is frustrating. Patience is hard, but I think we'll get through all of this together. So if anybody has anything else to add, if nobody has anything else to add, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting for this evening.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of adjourning? 500. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mike Weber, for getting us on the air.
And thank you, Aaron, for setting everything up.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Hi,
Brent.
Brent.
Night, friends.
Night. Good night.